Hey, what's up guys? My name is Boda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be our monthly ASIC pricing update video. This is going to be for August 2024. Today is the 31st. We're a little late on this one, but we did make it. So in this series, if you're new, what we're doing is we are looking at deviations in ASIC pricing. We're looking specifically for those deals. We're looking for trends. Are things getting cheaper, more expensive, just to kind of see where the market's going. In reality, like we mentioned, just to find those deals. Okay, so if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get to this thing. So we'll start by just taking a quick brief look at the market, and essentially this whole past month we've just been chopping, right? We've been literally up and down, bouncing between 58 and 62,000 over and over. As we hit like 61, 62, everybody gets bullish. As we dip under 60, it gets extremely bearish, just like that, right? Beginning of this month, we did have a very rough dip. We did go below 50, went down to 49K, which is quite a significant dip. A lot of good buying opportunities, still right now, especially with a lot of the alts, right? In reality, BTC hasn't really swayed much. It's been the alts, though, that have been getting affected. So there are still good deals to be had for just purchasing outright. Okay, so overall, the market is currently very confused, right? These are very important months coming up. A lot of things coming. September is typically a very bearish month. October, November typically are very good. Potential for rate cuts coming in September, so the market currently is kind of all over the place and expected to be this way for quite a while, right? So in reality, we don't really know, but we are definitely due for a move. In reality, we've been chopping in this range for 6 months now, right? We look back at the yearly chart. It's been since February, bro. Since February to now, we've been essentially ranging in the same range. Okay, so whether we start ranging upwards, downwards, we don't really know. My personal guess will probably be upwards. But just a lot of different things, a lot of different theories as to what's going to happen when these rate cuts happen. I know a lot of people are pointing towards a possible recession coming after and pointing towards previous rate cuts, what ended up happening, that the market dumped. We could be down for a few months. I've been kind of on the opposite side of that fence just because of how different things are. And remember, just because things correlate doesn't mean that that's going to happen now. It's just different situations. We are not scared of printing at all now. It's an election year. Who really knows though, right? But just kind of keep those things in mind, and that's kind of why the market's going to reflect that, okay? So we'll point out a little tweet that I saw a few days ago from Joshua Jake, and this is just showing previous months, like how it's done essentially in previous years, right? So in this case, it's highlighted for September. We can see 2023, it was up 3%, but we go before that, it's just all reds, right? So September isn't the greatest month, but if we do our comparison year, which we're currently 2024, if we go by the cycles, 2020 is where we want to look at. And this is kind of the standout, is look at October, November, December. Typically, this is where things do start to escalate. Will it follow it exactly? Maybe, maybe not, right? We don't know. Again, like we mentioned, a lot of things going on, especially with those rate cuts. We really have to see how the market's going to react to that. Who freaking knows, right? But either way, you should kind of be prepared. Who knows how many more months of these cheaper prices we have? Will they start going up? Who knows, right? But if we go by previous cycles, which is the only thing we kind of go off of, typically as things start escalating, the prices of those coins start appreciating. The prices of those ASICs will also, right? So definitely just something to keep in mind if you've been kind of eyeing things, right? And just another recent lesson we learned is just with pre-ordering ASICs, right? We just saw a great example of how risky it can be. A lot of things can change in just a few months. That's why I'm like a big advocate that it's hard to really project anything beyond really a 2, even 3 month window tops, right? A lot can change every time we do. Like every time I've done my quarterly portfolio updates, it's like a whole different world, right? It's just, it goes so fast. Things can change drastically. Prices can be affected drastically. But now we are starting to get to the point where things may start flipping in a positive direction. I know recently it's been all cuts, trying to get before the reductions, but we are going to get to a point where things are going to flip and they're going to do a 360, right? We're going to be worried about those prices increasing. Okay, so just kind of keep those things in the back of your head as we follow these prices. But again, part of the big reason we're following these prices so closely is to start looking for those trends, right? We're going to start seeing those little spikes. So like, oh, this one went up 5%, this one's starting to sell out, just to kind of see where the market's going, right? Because if we are in the market, you kind of want to get in before it happens, right? Before those price increases, or potentially we start seeing things get bearish, we start seeing reductions, maybe we can see a future reduction coming in, right? So just, you want to get those different insights of the market, even if you're not in the market of just buying one now, right? Even if your plan is maybe in 3 to 6 months, I want to wait for the dust to settle, it's still kind of a good idea just to follow the trends, just to kind of be up on it, right? So let's get to just ASIC miner profitability. And this is where we've been kind of saying things are going to start changing. And this is where instead of being Caspa being just the whole top end of the list, it's going to start being a lithium, just because, again, it's kind of the rebirth of what happened with Caspa. Not the same situation, right? There's going to be a lot of comparisons, and we are going to say things that are similar. Not the same situation. What we're referencing is just the fact that those are going to be the more profitable ASICs, which are going to drop drastically also, right? So currently right now, number 1 and 2 are the two variants of the AL1. One's at $233, the other at $219. Just again, keep in mind, this is going to change drastically, especially as retail gets their batches sometime next week. The reseller batches, the AL0s, will be coming out in another week or two, which in reality, those won't have much of an effect. In reality, it's the AL1s. Any of these larger gold shell units, and if iceriver does eventually announce their larger units, that's where more of the effects are going to be felt, right? So just something to keep in mind there. The KS5 Pro is down to $20 a day, just because, again, Caspa's price has been kind of stagnant and the hash rate has been mooning. It's freaking crazy. As we go down the list, the L9 is the next big gainer, and this is one that definitely has a lot of people's attention, including mine, just because it is a bit steadier. These supposedly did start shipping now, so we should start seeing what the hash rate increase will be here in the next week or two, right? So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. And as we go down the list, it's kind of just more of the same, right? Not a whole lot has changed from there. Everything kind of just staying sideways quite a bit. The only standout was the Z15 Pros, actually. Z15 Pros earlier this month, they did pump up quite a bit, right? Because profitability on Zcash did go up quite a bit, so those did get fairly popular. Whether or not they're worth buying, in my opinion, the time to buy these was like a year and a half ago, right? Especially the summer after they came out, when they were like in the $1,900 range. That way you had a year and a half to stack these coins, right? It was one of those ASICs that we had done that video, the ASICs that I'm kind of looking at. This was on the list for that reason, right? There's no competition there, not the most popular algo, so therefore can potentially give you a lot of time to stack coins, right? In reality, in the long run, in 2025, those will probably be the ASICs that will potentially do the best here, right? So this is one where there still is potential, but realistically, people chasing this guy are likely to have a similar scenario to what happened with like the KDA miners and the K7s. When those pumped, everybody went after it. They shipped out a whole bunch of them. Hash rate went through the roof, price retraced, and people didn't do as well as they thought they would, right? So, and the other risk here is, again, it's been out for a year and a half. Quite possible that we may have a refresher sometime in the next 6 months or so. Reality, we don't know. Maybe that's the only one for the bull market, but just something to keep in mind. Again, for me with ASICs, it's like latest and greatest or nothing, essentially, right? So just one of those to be very cautious with. But that one did have a nice little pump. But aside from that, it's more of the same. It's just a lot of stuff going sideways, right? And then as far as Caspa goes, again, like we mentioned, the freaking hash rate has been going. It did finally hit that 1 exahash point, right? It touched it briefly. Realistically, probably throughout the week, it'll finally fully sustain. I think it's back down to like 900 something. It's just going to bounce from there. But again, we did actually hit that point. It's probably going to stay there unless Caspa just starts retracing. Then it gets to the point where some of the larger units will begin unplugging, right? Like I know some of the KS1s, KS2s have begun. The little zeros, it's not really going to matter that much. It's going to be those larger units, right? The 1, 2s, the 3s, the 3Ms. As those start unplugging, if prices do dip, that can potentially affect the overall yield, right? Can affect the hash rate. To what extent, we don't know. In reality, I think if we were going to have a fairly significant dump, we would have had it already. And it would have sustained because we did flash crash down to, I think it hit 12 cents on that August 5th dip. But it was extremely brief. Like, it was literally, you had a very small window to catch it. Let's take a quick peek. And it did go down. They have it at 1301, but I did see like a 12.8, 12.9. And again, it just literally tapped it, came right back up, and it's just been holding strong in the 16-cent range, right? Which I know a lot of people are like bearish on it, but considering how a lot of the other alts are doing, it's been holding up extremely, extremely well. Again, it's not too far off from all-time high, which it just hit recently, right? Again, if we look at the 1-year chart and compare it to many of the other alts, there's very few coins that have a similar chart to this, right? So showing extreme strength in these tough times. So hopefully once the market does start turning around, you can start seeing some action here, right? So as far as pricing goes, not a whole lot of changes, right? So the biggest changes and where all the emphasis and focus has been is on the Caspa ASICs. I've done plenty of videos on there, so we're not even going to really touch on it. But those were the big changes, and that's where all the emphasis has been. Some of the other changes have been with these Aletheum ASICs, and it's just Gold Shell lowering some of their prices in order to essentially make room for their newer models, right? So the AL Box and the Box 2 did go down a bit, and is just to essentially accommodate the AL Box 2 Plus, which is their a little bit bigger version. Is essentially combining AL Box and AL Box 2, right? It's the difference is the form factor. It does have the built-in PSU, and it is priced somewhat accordingly, right? Even in comparison to their other models, they're kind of on point. Not the worst deal in the world. It's just not as efficient as the AL0. AL0 to me is still more appealing, but that's kind of been the extent of it. In reality, I think we're all waiting for the AL1s to land. I think that's what iceriver is also waiting for. Again, it's extremely, extremely likely they will release other units, right? Currently, they only have the AL0. Whether or not it's a mid-tier unit or only a competitor to bitmain's AL1, we don't know. But again, it's extremely, extremely likely they will. And most likely when that does come out, they may shake up the market a bit, right? Those IC boys are not scared to price things aggressively. So will they, won't they? We don't know. In reality, it would be more in their best interest to just kind of price it accordingly, undercut bitmain just enough to dissuade you from buying the AL1 and consider the iceriver unit? Or are they going to kind of tank the price like they did with Caspa and just rip off the band-aid and go ultra aggressive and kind of screw over the Gold Shell and the bitmain units? We don't know, but realistically, I have a funny feeling when Gold Shell's Echo unit gets announced, because that is a bigger unit for Aletheum, potentially once that thing gets officially announced and priced, that may be the opening for iceriver to officially make their move, right? So I know a lot of people are kind of waiting for it, and realistically, I think they will shake up the market. Very good chances that they're gonna price aggressively, because again, this guy was priced primarily on the profitability, which initially was like $1,000 a day, which again, we all knew wasn't gonna happen. We know it's still not gonna be anywhere near there, especially once this first shipment lands. Okay, so all I'm saying is do not be surprised that if you see a pretty extreme drop on the Aletheum units. So that's why like the higher end units or the higher priced units, let me rephrase that, such as like the previous AL boxes and box 2s, they were probably not going to be good buys because the prices are going to go down quite a bit, right? So potentially even with the AL0, but realistically, again, if you're buying 1 or 2 units, if it goes from $800 down to $600, $500, not the greatest deal in the world. It's kind of risk to reward kind of thing. Where it is rough is, again, if you spend $6,000-7,000 on this AL Box 2 and a couple of weeks later it's down to a fraction of that, that's where it gets rough, right? And especially knowing that there's potential that we are going to get big dips here, right? So be extremely cautious, especially with anything over like $1,000, right? Because again, if it's $800 and it goes down to $500-600, not that big of a deal. But if you're buying something that's 8, 12, 15, 30,000, and it does get cut in half, that's an extremely big deal. Okay, so just be cautious here, right? So the real deals though are one that's interesting, the Jasminers. Okay, very aggressive pricing kind of out of nowhere, considering that they've been very just hard-headed, I guess you could say, on the price. They have not budged, they have not wanted to move, and recently, these past few months, they've been pricing fairly aggressively. Shout out to Shaktoshi on Twitter. He pointed out to me a few weeks ago that a potential reason is because Jazz or Jingle Mining actually did recently list. This could be a placeholder price. This is not confirmed that it was what it's going to be, but they did put a price down on the X44Q, right? And they have it as $5,600. Okay, so as we all know, Jingle Mining is very closely affiliated with Jasminer. This has been up for quite a bit, so it does seem like it's more than a placeholder. Typically, a lot of times the placeholders are like a super obviously fake price, being like $100 or $999, etc., etc. This is a very specific price and a price that is pretty realistic and pretty good, right? So the fact that this is on the website recently, we've been getting extremely big price cuts with the Jasminer units, specifically the X16s, kind of signaling that there's potential that this guy may be getting released soon, right? Soon. Could be 3 months, could be 6 months, we don't know, but it does seem like we are probably going to get an announcement here maybe in the next few months. Maybe they're waiting for the market to flip, and that's when they'll do it. Okay, so just something to keep in mind if you are considering some of these, because some of these are pretty freaking good, man. So like the X16QE, the 1650, which again is the lower end 6 gig unit, $11.99. Okay, so through NHash though, the kind of crappy part, you have to order 2. There is a MOQ of 2. If you go through Jingle Mining, they do have a very similar price, right? So there's 2 variants of the QE now. Actually, there's a 1650 and a 1750. The 1650 is $10.90 on their site. The downfall though is that the only shipping option is an expedited option, and it's $369. Okay, so that's where kind of miss out on the deal a bit. So if you're in a situation where you're considering getting 2, or you have somebody locally who would split one with you, this is not bad, bro. It's $1,200. Because they do have the regular models, and they have them at $19.99 shipped. But I mean, this guy at $1,200 is definitely the much better deal. Unless the 8 gigs of RAM is like a deal breaker for you, this is definitely quite a bit of a deal. But again, you just do have to factor in the potential of this guy coming out sometime soon. My other kind of curiosity would be is if this guy does get announced, that the pricing is here, is what is Bombax going to react with? How low are they going to go? Are they going to adjust? Because realistically, if this guy's 4,300 shipped and that guy's $5,600, I'd be going for the Jasminer all day, right? So out of curiosity, would they go down? Are they going to go down to $3,000, $2,800? We don't know what they'll do, but I think once this X44Q does officially get announced, the pricing gets official, then we can see a shakeup in some of these other models, right? So depending on the price points, obviously this is the superior unit, it's more efficient, it's a denser unit, but depending on the price point, the Bombax unit could be appealing. I don't know how much lower these guys can go, right? It's almost hard to picture it under $1,000, but I guess, right? Anything can happen at this point, so something to keep in mind. But it is extremely appealing, especially if on the home miner front. But I mean, this is something that, again, it's actually profitable. There actually is potential here. My appeal with it would be not necessarily for ETC. I would be more about mining Octa, right? That would be the focus with any of the ETC ASICs. Whether or not it's mining Octa directly, depending on profitability, or using just selling the ETC into Octa, right? But the goal here would be, for me at least, going that route, right? But pretty interesting there. The other thing we're kind of eyeing is what happens with the L9, right? So currently the L9s are shipping, and NHash does not have any more listings for that August batch. They only have pre-orders for November and January, right? So the November batch is 8,600 bucks. So now we're gonna have to wait and see once these land. Will they have spot allocations for October, or was the August batch just a tiny batch that they pre-ordered and sold, and realistically this November batch will be the first one? We don't know, right? Maybe we'll find out here in the next month or so, or in the next few weeks. But if this guy is getting down to 8,600 bucks, then who do you think also is going to drop significantly? These AlphaPex units, right? Which in reality, either one is fairly appealing. AlphaPex is definitely proving themselves. People are now have had these units for quite a bit of time, and I've heard little to no issues and just only positive news essentially coming from those units, right? So it's definitely something that is now on the table. Either one of these bigger guys, as they are more efficient than like the L7, for example, and it is something new. Technically, you could consider a used L7 because those things are still performing extremely well. The downfall would be is just the wear and tear on the unit, right? It would have to be cheap enough to really consider it over a brand new unit, because keep in mind those things are now, depending on when it was purchased, could be potentially 3 years old now, right? So just something to factor in there as well. But definitely going to be curious to see what happens here, right? Because if this guy's at 8,600 bucks and currently the DG1 Plus is at 91 currently, if prices kind of remain where they're at, potentially in a month, I could definitely see these things dropping. To what extent, we don't really know, but definitely something I will be eyeing, right? And then we do have the DG Home 1, but this guy's not coming out till like December, so realistically more of my focus would be, if I do get another big boy ASIC, it'll most likely be a script ASIC or potentially an extremely efficient ETC unit. Like, I'm not gonna front, this X44Q, if it comes in at 5,600 bucks, does become extremely appealing, right? Just because again, it's so damn efficient that it's something that can mine through the bull market, potentially beyond that, right? That's kind of the appeal here with any ASICs I get from here on out, is to just look to that point, something that I would feel comfortable holding all the way through the bull market and then holding potentially even beyond that, right? And in the case of script or ETC, those are the algos I would be eyeing. We're gonna have to wait and see, right? In reality, I think a lot of the other prices didn't really move a ton, just because again, the market is just, these next 6 weeks are gonna dictate where we may be going for the next while, right? If things do flip, we do have those rate cuts, the market sentiment does begin flipping, then what's going to happen here, right? It's not going to make sense for them to cut somewhat aggressively and then increase aggressively in a month or so. Realistically, I do fully see these prices just kind of remaining sideways, waiting to see how that market reacts, because if it reacts very positively, things do change, the 4-year cycle does start coming into play, these things will escalate quickly. Because again, the biggest thing we've noticed with the ASICs, soon as that price goes up, the prices are up the same day in some cases, right? So if we do have aggressive increases in price, literally that same day they will go up. For it to reverse course though, it does take a sustained period of time trending down essentially, right? It's not something where it's going to be instantaneous. It's kind of like what's happening now, right? This is slowly, like if we were to dip, like say the rate cuts do come out, market does go in recession mode, then at that point, there most likely will be a reduction, right? Depending on the algorithm. All these miners, all these ASICs have different trends. Like for example, the BTC ASICs, they have not really budged since the halving, right? Profitability has been not so great. We're expecting potentially bigger price drops, and they haven't really happened. Although I do expect by October, because of S21 XP finally dropping, because of that release, that may force some of the other units to drop more, right? So gonna kind of have to wait and see. Again, I think by the time those rate cuts hit, by the time we do this next video, we may have a better picture, right? So I'm definitely gonna be following these. If anything does change drastically prior to then, I may do the next one sooner. We're gonna have to wait and see, because again, just anything can happen, right? We're getting to that point where at any given moment, any positive news, the market can flip and just potentially not reverse course as much, okay? So even though if we do begin this bullish trend, it's not straight up and to the right only for the next 12 months. There are dips, there are fluctuations. Keep those things in mind, Okay, so let me know in the comments, guys, what you guys are doing. Are you guys still kind of eyeing things, or are you guys done buying ASICs? I know a lot of people have been pissed with iceriver and bitmain with those price reductions, and I get it, right? So it's definitely not for everybody. Like I've mentioned over and over these past few years, the ASIC mining game is ruthless. It gives no fucks about your feeling, no fucks about the market. It's just ruthless. Okay, it's something you fully have to understand. Especially, I know a lot of people have been trying to switch from GPUs to ASICs, thinking this is the easier play. Extreme risk here, right? Because not only extreme risk and profitability changes, the hardware price changes, but it's just the lack of resale value, right? The advantage you have with CPUs and GPUs is that you still have some kind of resale value, right? In many cases, you can mine with something, especially anybody with like a 4090. If you've bought one anytime in these past like 12, 18 months, in many cases, you've been able to mine on it for an extended period of time and sell it essentially for what you paid for it, right? Which is actually something I did. I purchased a refurb one quite a ways back, had it for 8 months, mined on it, grabbed the yield, and then sold it for a little bit more than what I had paid for it used, right? So different things to think about, but again, in reality right now with alts being so low, not a bad time to be DCAing. That's kind of where my focus has been more so than anything. We're gonna have to see how these things play out, but again, right now, the key is just stack, bro. Stack, stack, stack. I'm following the trends just because of future purchases. Am I really in the market for one anytime soon? Not really, right? Reality, I'm kind of just backing off a bit, just kind of letting the market settle and see what happens these next 2 months. Okay, let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching, and I am out.